Hi, friends. My name is Kenton Whitman, and together with my family, we aim to share wilderness skills, mindfulness practices, wild edible plants, family adventures, and skills that break you free from the limits of civilized life. Join us by subscribing to our channel and joining our YouTube family. Hello, friends. Someone asked a really good question about being unemployed and the feelings that they were grappling with being unemployed. And I think this is relevant to a lot of people right now because a lot of people have lost their jobs during the whole events of the last 2 years that are going on still. And this brings up some really important things about how we view ourselves and our self-worth and how we view the worth of other people. When I think about this, I think that at some point, we humans started to become valued for basically how well we serve the government or how well we serve the system or the machine. You'll see comments on videos where people are living off the land or living alternatively, where people will say, oh, that person's just sucking off all the rest of us. They're not contributing anything. And usually there's some reference to paying taxes. So the idea being that the value in a human being maybe is how much taxes they pay into the system, which starts to get a little weird when you think about how most of us maybe feel about the system or the government or what it is doing with our tax dollars, and if it's using them with wisdom and compassion and consciousness. So you start weighing those things and you start to wonder, is it kind of strange that we would look at a human being or look at ourselves and feel like we are contributing to the world, that we have a meaningful existence because we are paying taxes, or in the case of being unemployed, our value is only there when we are working. Now, even if we're more philosophically minded and more thoughtfully minded, we probably still feel this because this is a huge part of our social conditioning, that you grow up and then you become a contributing member of society. And you do that basically by getting a job and, again, paying your taxes. Usually there's not a lot of import put on whether your job is doing a lot of good for the world, but, if you're paying taxes. And in a lot of ways, I'm grossly oversimplifying things there. Obviously, most of us, especially people that are watching these videos, don't think of a person's value as how much they're paying in taxes. But again, there's something in us that feels like if we're not working, if we're not doing something of that nature, somehow we're not contributing. And what I'm going to suggest today to shift this around in our minds is that it's okay to think of ourselves as having value based on our contribution to our community. Now, I'm going to go even further and suggest that we have maybe intrinsic value as a human being, the way all life has intrinsic value. But before I try to go that deep, to say that if we're talking about contributing to our community, which I think most of us would agree is a worthy goal. And I'm not talking about contributing to your government or society as the huge juggernaut thing, but contributing to your community, to the people around you in meaningful ways. Now, when we talk about that, then we can start to see, wait a second, paying taxes, having a job, those things maybe are not so important as how we affect the people around us. So a person may not have a job, but there may be other ways through their music that they're putting out into the world for free, or they are making videos. Some of you have your own channels and are creating beautiful videos to share with the world. And maybe we are going and helping out our neighbor, cooking a meal and inviting some friends or neighbors over, or that lonely person down the street. There's all kinds of ways that we can positively contribute to our community, to the world we live in. And especially if we start to think not just to our individual flag, but the world in general. And through our technology, we can do that today. If you have your own YouTube channel and you're creating videos that are putting out positive stuff into the world, that reaches beyond borders. It reaches people all over the world. And that is a huge contribution to this global community. So if you are unemployed, a way that you can turn this around is to start thinking, how can I use my life energies in a way that contributes? And that can be globally, that can be in my local community, that can just be to the person next door. Any of those levels are good, because helping that person next door who needs a hand is a powerful thing. It is not little. Now I'm going to go that step further and suggest that maybe we humans even have an intrinsic value. Now this can be more difficult for us to wrap our heads around, especially because, well, with that conditioning that we are valuable only if we are working hard and paying our taxes, that person that's sitting on a couch and just playing video games all day, it's easy for some people to look at that person and say, that person, they have no value. Why should they even be here? But when we start looking that way, I think it's important that we turn a critical eye to ourselves. Because if we look carefully, we can look at pretty much any person and we can say, that person is contributing in this way, that way, and that way. And they are harming in this way, that way, and that way. So I may be contributing by making this video and putting this thing out into the world that I hope is helpful for a lot of people. I also drove a car today and contributed to the whole petrol industry. And even in uploading this, I'm using plastics and things that eventually are going to go into the waste stream and create more trash. So even if they're recycled, they're going to be using energy and spewing out smoke. And I certainly wouldn't want to be sitting on top of that smokestack and breathing it. So why am I okay with putting that out into the world? So if I look at my own self with that critical eye, I will see that there are things I give to the world and there are things I take from the world. And so that person sitting on the couch all day, well, maybe in one way of looking at it, they're not giving as much to the world. Though if we look carefully, maybe they're playing a big massive, MMORPG, and they're interacting with some other people, and sometimes those interactions can be meaningful. And they maybe aren't getting in a car because they are on the couch all day and they're using a minimal amount of electricity with their gaming console and not using nearly as much gasoline and pollution spewing as, for instance, I am or you might have today. So if we can step back and be a little critical of ourselves, that helps us to look at others and see that maybe I shouldn't be so judgmental of the way other people are living. And that's a first step to start to relieve ourselves of some of that judgment. That's a first step towards starting to see an intrinsic value. Now for most of us, we can walk into the forest, we can see a hawk fly overhead, and we can see an intrinsic value in that hawk. We can run our hands on the bark of a birch tree, and we can see intrinsic value. We don't have to say, oh, this tree is only valuable if it is cut down and gives me firewood. We can say, wow, this is beautiful because it's beautiful. Because it's here in the world. It's enriching my experience just by being. And if I look, wait a second, that person that I thought was worthless, that's just sitting on the couch and doing nothing, they just enriched my experience because they got me thinking. They got me looking at my own life. They got me exploring my mentality a little bit more deeply. When we start to look at the world like that, we start to see value in everything, in every experience. And this is life-changing because it steps us out of this constantly trying to arrange our life to make sure that we're having only the right experiences, interacting only with the right people, thinking only the right thoughts, having only the right emotions. And instead, seeing the world, taking it as it unfolds in front of us, and saying, wow, what can I learn from this? How can this enrich me? This is not what I was expecting today. This is not what I was hoping for. But how can this enrich my life experience? See how that's a very, very different way of seeing the world? Intrinsic value versus how is this thing a resource that's going to fuel the system or fuel the machine? I'm going to suggest that if we started seeing the world like that, seeing ourselves like that, that we'd experience a different world together. Maybe we can all give it a try. It has to start kind of with yourself. So looking at your own life and saying, where are places that you feel like you don't have value, that maybe you're meaningless, that you're harming the world, and seeing, is there a different way you could look at that? Is there a way that you could see intrinsic value in yourself? If you, tomorrow, something happened to you so that you no longer could walk or speak or do any of the things that you're doing today, could you still see yourself as having intrinsic value? Because you would, because people would look at you and have an experience of fear, of gratitude, of compassion, whatever their experience is when they encounter you. You're giving something to them through that. You're giving just by being. All the better if today you can walk, or you can talk, or you can do some of the things that you were able to do yesterday. So at the same time, can we have a vision of intrinsic value and also say, how can I use my gifts to contribute to this community in the best way I possibly can? Share your thoughts, your feelings, your ideas down in the comments. If you are unemployed, if you lost your job in the last couple of years, how have you dealt with that? What's the emotional journey been as you navigated those waters? As always, cannot wait to see what you have to say down in the comments. Love to you all, my friends.